In the vast darkness of space, where civilizations rise and fall like distant stars, there exists a truth that few species dare to acknowledge. When pushed to the edge of extinction, when all hope seems lost, when the universe itself appears indifferent to suffering, one species stands apart from all others. Humans don't just survive impossible odds. They rewrite the very meaning of impossible. They are the species that sees a burning building and runs toward the flames. The ones who hear a cry for help across the void of space and answer without hesitation. When other races calculate risks and probabilities, humans calculate one thing: what needs to be done. This is the story of such a moment. When an alien mother's desperate plea echoed across the galaxy, when her children faced horrors beyond imagination, when her entire species teetered on the brink of annihilation, she turned to the one force in the universe known for achieving the impossible. She turned to humanity. What happened next would forge bonds that transcended species, reshape the political landscape of known space, and prove once again that when the universe needs heroes, it calls upon the children of Earth. Some say humans are reckless. Others call them naive. But when everything is at stake, when hope is the only currency that matters, there is no force more powerful than a human who has decided to care. This is their story. This is our story. The emergency beacon pierced through the static of deep space communications like a knife through silk. Captain Sarah Chun was reviewing supply manifests in her quarters aboard the U.S. Defiance when her communication officer burst through the door without ceremony. "Captain, you need to hear this," Lieutenant Rodriguez said, his usually calm demeanor cracked with urgency. Sarah followed him to the bridge, where the crew had gathered around the communications console. The main display showed a signal analysis. The beacon was broadcasting on all known frequencies, cycling through every documented language in the galactic database. "It's been going for 6 hours straight," Rodriguez explained. "The computer finally decoded it 20 minutes ago." The translation appeared on screen, but it was the audio that made Sarah's blood run cold. Through the static, a voice emerged. Alien, yes, but unmistakably that of a mother in agony. "Please, anyone who can hear this. My name is Zara Thyss of the Kytherian Collective. Our colony ships have been captured. Our children, they have our children. The Devourers have taken them to the processing stations. Please, if any civilized species receives this message, I beg you, save my children, and my people will give you anything. Our technology, our knowledge, our eternal loyalty. Just save them." The message repeated, the same desperate words over and over. Sarah felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever civilians were in danger. Around her, the bridge crew had fallen silent. "Sir," the tactical officer spoke up, "the Kytherians, aren't they part of the hegemony?" Sarah nodded grimly. The hegemony, a coalition of 12 advanced species that had rejected Earth's application for membership barely a year ago. They had deemed humanity too aggressive and emotionally unstable for galactic politics. The same hegemony that had written humanity off as barbaric warmongers. "How far is the signal's origin?" Sarah asked. 3 days at maximum burn, Captain." "But, sir," Rodriguez hesitated. "We're talking about the Sigma Draconis system. That's deep in Devourer territory. The Devourers. Even their names sent chills through spacefaring civilizations. A nomadic species that viewed all other life as nothing more than resources to be consumed. They didn't conquer worlds, they harvested them. Every living thing, from the smallest microbe to entire civilizations, was processed into biofuel for their massive fleet cities. "What's our current mission status?" Sarah asked her XO, Commander James Park. "We're 3 days out from the Kepler station supply run. No critical cargo, mostly routine supplies and mail." Sarah walked to her captain's chair, her mind already made up, but knowing she had to consider all angles. The Defiance was a heavy cruiser, well-armed but not designed for deep penetration missions into hostile territory. They had a crew of 240 souls, all of whom had families waiting for them back home. But somewhere in the darkness ahead, alien children were dying. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "I'm picking up additional signals. Looks like, sir, it's the entire Galactic Council's emergency frequency." The main display shifted to show message traffic from across known space. Species after species, all receiving the same desperate plea. And, one by one, their responses filtered back. The Altarian Republic expresses deep sympathy, but cannot commit resources to such a dangerous mission. The Vegan Trade Confederation lacks the military capabilities for such an undertaking. The Centauri Alliance suggests diplomatic channels be explored first. Each polite refusal hit the bridge like a physical blow. Sarah watched her crew's faces, saw the mix of anger and disgust building. These were the same civilized species that looked down on humanity, and, when faced with genuine crisis, they offered nothing but empty words. "Captain," the tactical officer said quietly, "long-range sensors are picking up movement in the Sigma Draconis system. Multiple large ships, looks like Devourer harvester vessels." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her own daughter back on Earth. Emma was 12, the same age as many of the Kytherian children according to their cultural database. She imagined Emma's face, terrified and alone, calling out for her mother while monsters decided her fate. When she opened her eyes, her decision was crystal clear. "Rodriguez, open a channel on all hegemony frequencies." "Aye, Captain." Sarah stood, straightening her uniform. Around the galaxy, species were listening. Some with curiosity, others with judgment, all waiting to see what the barbaric humans would do. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Ship Defiance to all vessels receiving the Kytherian distress signal. We have received the plea of ZAR-THYSS, and we are responding. Any vessel willing to assist in a humanitarian rescue mission is welcome to join us at the following coordinates." She paused, looking around at her crew. Not one face showed doubt or fear, only grim determination. "For those who doubt our intentions or capabilities, let me be clear. We don't care about politics. We don't care about past grievances. When children are in danger, when mothers cry out in anguish, humanity answers. That's who we are. That's who we've always been." She nodded to Rodriguez to close the channel, then turned to her crew. "All hands, this is the captain. Set course for Sigma Draconis, maximum burn. All departments prepare for combat operations. We're going to bring those children home." The bridge erupted in activity. Navigation plotted the course. Engineering began pushing the fusion reactors to maximum safe output, and the tactical department started running combat scenarios. But it was the quiet conversation between two ensigns that Sarah overheard that made her smile grimly. 3 days to reach them, one whispered. "Think we'll be in time?" asked the other. "We're human," came the reply. "We'll make it in time." As the Defiance changed course and accelerated toward the darkness of Devourer space, Sarah opened her private communication channel to Fleet Command. She would need to inform Admiral Morrison of her decision to abandon their mission for an unauthorized rescue operation deep in hostile territory. She expected arguments, maybe even court-martial proceedings when they returned. What she got instead surprised her. "Chun," Admiral Morrison's voice came through clearly despite the distance. "How long until you reach them?" 67 hours at current speed, sir." "Make it 60. I'm dispatching the Yorktown and the Australia to back you up. They'll be 12 hours behind you." Sarah felt a surge of pride. "Sir, the Council is going to be furious. This could trigger a diplomatic incident." "Let them be furious," Morrison replied. "Sometimes doing the right thing matters more than keeping the peace. Bring those children home, Captain. That's an order." As the call ended, Sarah reflected on the strange position humanity found itself in. Rejected by the galactic community for being too emotional, too willing to fight, too quick to action. And now, when that same community faced its greatest moral test, they had all failed while the barbaric humans raced toward danger without hesitation. The next 3 days would test everything they believed about themselves. The Devourers had never faced a concentrated human assault. They were about to learn why even the hegemony, for all their political objections, still spoke of human military capabilities in hushed tones. But first, they had to survive the journey through space that even the bravest hegemony captains avoided. The region beyond the outer rim worlds where the Devourers ruled absolutely, where entire star systems had been stripped bare of life, where ships went missing without even time to send distress calls. "Captain," the navigation officer called out, "we're approaching the outer marker buoys." entering Devourer space in 15 minutes. Sarah nodded, settling into her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency that had made human military forces legendary, even among their critics. No wasted motion, no unnecessary chatter, just professionals doing their jobs with the knowledge that lives hung in the balance. The first sign that they had truly entered Devourer's space was the silence. It wasn't just the absence of radio chatter or navigation beacons. It was the complete lack of life signatures that should have filled any star system. Where there should have been the electromagnetic humming of inhabited worlds, the thermal signatures of cities, the radio waves of civilization, there was nothing. Just the cold radiation of dead planets orbiting in different stars. Commander James Park stood beside Captain Chun at the forward observation deck, watching the tactical display update as their sensors swept the system. "It's like they never existed," he murmured. Sarah nodded, studying the readout. 3 weeks ago, this had been the Proxima Lyrae system, home to the Zinthran Republic's mining colonies. 2 billion souls working the asteroid belts and terraforming projects. Now there was nothing but stripped metal hulks floating in space and planets scoured clean down to the bedrock. "How do they do it so quickly?" asked Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had joined them for the sensor sweep briefing. Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins, the ship's xenobiologist, pulled up a holographic display showing Devourer technology analysis. "From what we've been able to piece together from previous encounters, they use a combination of atmospheric processors and biological agents. The atmosphere is converted into breathable gas for their ship cities, while the biological agents break down all organic matter into a protein-rich soup that can be easily harvested." The silence on the bridge was deafening. Sarah had read the reports, but seeing the aftermath firsthand drove the reality home in a way that no intelligence briefing could match. "Time to destination?" she asked. 36 hours at current speed," the navigator replied. "But, Captain, we're starting to pick up patrol signatures on the long-range sensors." Sarah moved back to the command center, where the tactical display showed a three-dimensional map of local space. Red dots marked confirmed Devourer vessels. Yellow indicated possible contacts, and green showed their own position along with the projected courses of the Yorktown and Australia racing to catch up. "How many ships are we looking at?" Commander Park asked the tactical officer. "Hard to say, sir. The Devourers don't use conventional engine signatures. We're tracking heat blooms and gravitational distortions. Best estimate is between 8 and 12 vessels of various sizes in our projected path." Sarah studied the display, her tactical mind automatically calculating approach vectors and engagement scenarios. The Defiance was heavily armed for a cruiser, but Devourer vessels were notoriously difficult to fight. They built their ships like living organisms, able to repair damage quickly and adapt their tactics based on enemy weapons. "Captain," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not from the Kytherians." Sarah felt her blood chill. "Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything in the galactic database. It sounded like grinding metal mixed with organic breathing, words formed by something that had never been designed for speech. "Human vessel. You travel in the feeding grounds of the eternal hunger. Your flesh knowledge will feed our ship cities. Your metal will strengthen our hulls. Surrender now, and your consumption will be swift." The message repeated in perfect English, demonstrating that the Devourers had encountered humans before and learned their language. The implications were chilling. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, 3 vessels just appeared on our starboard bow. They weren't there 30 seconds ago." Sarah moved to the main display, watching as the alien vessels resolved into horrifying detail. Devourer ships looked like someone had merged biological organisms with starships. Smooth organic curves interspersed with metallic structures, pulsing lights that looked disturbingly like nerve systems, and what appeared to be breathing vents along their hulls. Distance, 2 million kilometers, and closing. Their acceleration curve suggests they'll intercept us in 47 minutes. Sarah made her decision quickly. They couldn't outrun the Devourers, and they couldn't afford to be delayed. Every hour they spent fighting patrol vessels was another hour the Kytherian children remained in the hands of these monsters. "All hands, battle stations. Prepare for combat." The Defiance transformed around them. Blast shields sealed the observation windows, additional armor plating deployed from hidden compartments, and the ship's artificial gravity adjusted to combat configuration. The lights shifted to red battle lighting, and the constant hum of the ship's systems took on a more urgent tone. "Weapons hot, Captain," reported the tactical officer. "All missile tubes loaded with armor-piercing warheads. Point defense systems online. Main railguns charging." Sarah settled into her command chair as the tactical display updated to show firing solutions and projected battle scenarios. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the calm efficiency that had made human military forces legendary throughout known space. "Captain, Dr. Hawkins called from her science station. I'm detecting some unusual readings from the Devourer vessels. Their hulls are showing biological activity, cellular regeneration patterns." "Meaning what, Doctor?" "Meaning they can literally heal battle damage in real time. Conventional weapons might not be effective." Sarah smiled grimly. "Good thing we don't use conventional weapons. Tactical, load tubes 1 through 4 with quantum warheads. If they want to regenerate, let's see them grow back from atomic disruption." The first Devourer vessel opened fire at maximum range, streams of what looked like living energy that moved in patterns too organic to be artificial plasma. The Defiance's shields flared as the alien weapons impacted, and Sarah felt the ship shudder under the assault. "Return fire," she ordered calmly. The quantum warheads streaked across space, each one guided by artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to adjust targeting based on enemy movement patterns. The lead Devourer ship tried to evade, its hull rippling like muscle tissue as it attempted to change course. The first warhead struck amidships, and the result was unlike anything in the tactical manuals. Instead of a simple explosion, the quantum disruption field expanded outward from the impact point like a spreading infection. Wherever it touched the organic hull, the cellular structure simply ceased to exist on a molecular level. The Devourer ship's agonized scream echoed across all radio frequencies. "Dear God," whispered Rodriguez, "it's alive. The whole ship is alive." The damaged vessel tried to regenerate, but quantum disruption couldn't be healed. It was permanent deletion at the subatomic level. The ship began to list as entire sections of its hull simply disappeared. The other 2 Devourer vessels responded with fury, accelerating directly toward the Defiance while firing everything they had. The human ship's shields held under the barrage, but Sarah could see the power readings dropping. "Commander Park, take us in close. These things are tough, but let's see how they handle a knife fight." The Defiance accelerated toward the enemy vessels, its crew working in perfect coordination. Human military doctrine had always emphasized aggression and adaptability, principles that had served them well against conventional enemies, and were about to be tested against something completely alien. The close-range engagement was brutal and swift. Human railguns, designed to pierce the heaviest armor with raw kinetic force, punched through the organic hulls of the Devourer ships like needles through skin. But the aliens' weapons were equally devastating, streams of energy that seemed to eat through metal and composite armor alike. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported the damage control officer. "Ceiling blast doors. We've lost 2-point defense turrets." Sarah watched the tactical display as the battle evolved. The Defiance was holding its own, but barely. These weren't the primitive raiders that some intelligence reports had suggested. These were sophisticated warships with weapons and tactics unlike anything in human experience. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the damaged Devourer vessel. You need to hear this." The voice was the same grinding mechanical tone, but now it carried something else: curiosity. "Human warriors, your weapons cause permanent death. This is not known to us. You fight with the hunger that ends hunger. We would learn your flesh knowledge before consuming you." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Devourers weren't just predators, they were collectors. They wanted to understand human weapons before they destroyed humanity. "Tell them," Sarah said coldly, "that they'll learn nothing. Because we're not here to fight them. We're here to save the children they've stolen. And if they try to stop us, they'll discover that humans are very good at permanent solutions." The response was immediate and terrifying. All 3 Devourer vessels began to change, their organic hulls rippling and reshaping themselves. New weapons emerged from their flesh, energy cannons that pulsed with malevolent life, and launching ports for what looked like living missiles. They're adapting, Dr. Hawkins said in amazement. They're literally evolving new weapons based on our combat performance. Sarah's smile was cold as winter. Let them adapt. Tactical, prepare antimatter charges. If they want to play evolution, let's skip to the extinction event. The battle that followed would be remembered in military academies for generations. The Defiants, outnumbered and facing an enemy that could adapt to any weapon, fought with a combination of human ingenuity and sheer bloody-minded determination that left the Devourers reeling. When the first antimatter warhead detonated against the lead Devourer vessel, the explosion lit up space like a newborn star. The alien ship simply ceased to exist, along with a significant portion of local spacetime. The remaining vessels, faced with weapons that could erase them from reality itself, broke off their attack and fled into the dark. Damage report, Sarah called as the red alert klaxons finally fell silent. Hull breaches on 3 decks, but contained. We've lost 18% of our point defense grid and taken moderate damage to the main reactor. We can continue, but we're not going to win another fight like that. Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display as the fleeing Devourer vessels disappeared into the darkness. They had won, but at a cost. And somewhere ahead lay the main Devourer fleet and the processing stations where innocent children were dying. Captain, the communications officer said quietly, we're receiving another transmission. It's from Zara-THYSS. The alien mother's voice filled the bridge, and Sarah was struck by how much hope had crept into the desperate plea. Unknown vessels approaching our location. We have detected weapons fire. Please, if you are coming to help us, hurry. They have begun the processing. Our children. They're taking our children one by one. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command, and the bird the Sigma Draconis system was a monument to horror. As the Defiance emerged from its final hyperspace jump, the crew stared in stunned silence at the displays showing what had once been a thriving star system. Where there should have been planets, massive organic structures floated in space, city-sized creatures that pulsed with malevolent life. These were the Devourer ship cities, living vessels that housed billions of the alien predators. Sweet Mother of God, whispered Lieutenant Rodriguez, his voice barely audible on the bridge. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the center of it all, studying the tactical display with the cold calculation of a warrior preparing for the fight of her life. The readings were almost incomprehensible. Dozens of ship cities, each one larger than Manhattan, all connected by streams of energy that looked disturbingly like blood vessels. Dr. Hawkins, analysis, Sarah ordered. The xenobiologist's hands shook as she worked her instruments. Captain, these aren't ships in any sense we understand. They're living organisms on a scale that shouldn't be possible. The energy readings suggest they're feeding, constantly consuming, and converting matter into biomass. How many Kytherians are still alive? Sarah asked, dreading the answer. I'm detecting approximately 2,000 life signs matching Kytherian biology. But, Captain, Dr. Hawkins paused, her face pale. I'm also detecting human life signs. About 300 of them. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Human life signs meant that somewhere in this nightmare system, their own people were being held captive. The implications were staggering. How is that possible? Commander Park asked. The Devourers have been taking samples, Dr. Hawkins replied grimly. From every species they encounter. They're not just consuming, they're studying, learning, building a biological database of every intelligent life form in the galaxy. Sarah felt rage building in her chest, the same cold fury that had driven her to defy orders and race across space to help strangers. But now it was personal. Now it was her own species suffering in those organic horrors. Location of the processing stations? She asked. The tactical officer highlighted several structures on the display, smaller organisms attached to the ship cities like parasites. The life signs are concentrated in these structures. But, Captain, the defensive perimeter is unlike anything we've ever encountered. Energy weapons, gravity manipulators, and what appear to be living fighter craft. Sarah studied the defensive arrangements with a professional eye. The Devourers had positioned their ship cities in a complex, three-dimensional formation that provided overlapping fields of fire while protecting the processing stations at the center. Any conventional assault would be suicidal. "Captain," the communications officer interrupted. "Incoming transmission. It's from one of the ship's cities. Put it through." The voice that emerged was different from the patrol vessels they had encountered. This one carried authority, age, and a chilling intelligence. "Human vessel. I am the render mind of the primary feeding collective. Your species has been noted. Your weapons show promise. Your tactical knowledge is interesting. We offer you a proposition." Sarah remained silent, waiting. "Your flesh knowledge is valuable. More valuable than the Kytherians. More valuable than most species we have consumed. Join us willingly, and your consumption will be educational. We will learn from you before we feed. Your memories will become part of the eternal hunger. You will achieve immortality in our essence." The bridge crew looked at their captain, waiting for her response. Sarah walked slowly to the communications station, her mind racing through possibilities and strategies. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Defiance to the Render Mind. I have a counter-proposal." She paused, letting silence fill the channel for a moment. "Release every prisoner you're holding. Human, Kytherian, and any other species. Withdraw from this system and never return. Do this, and we'll consider not sterilizing this entire star system." The response was immediate, laughter that sounded like grinding metal mixed with organic breathing. "One small vessel against the eternal hunger? Your confidence is amusing. We have consumed civilizations with fleets numbering in the thousands. We have devoured entire star systems. What can one human ship accomplish?" Sarah's smile was cold as the space around them. "I guess you're about to find out. Chin out." She turned to her crew, seeing determination and grim resolve on every face. They knew the odds. They knew this was likely a suicide mission. But they also knew that somewhere in those organic nightmares, children were dying and humans were suffering. "All hands, this is the captain. In 10 minutes, we begin the assault on the Devourer processing stations. Our mission is simple. Get in, get the prisoners out, and show these monsters why even their own nightmares have nightmares about humanity." She paused, looking around the bridge at faces she had served with for years. "I won't lie to you. The odds are against us. We're one ship against an entire fleet. But we have something they don't. We have each other. We have the knowledge that what we're doing is right. And we have the absolute certainty that there is no force in this universe more dangerous than a human being who has decided to protect innocent lives." The crew erupted in cheers that echoed through the ship's corridors. Sarah felt a surge of pride in these people, her people, who were willing to face impossible odds for strangers they had never met. Tactical, prepare for Operation Thunderbolt. All missile tubes loaded with quantum warheads. Charge the main railguns to maximum power. Engineering, I need everything the reactor can give me. We're going to punch through their defenses and extract those prisoners before they know what hit them. The Defiance began its approach, accelerating toward the Devourer formation at maximum burn. The ship's systems hummed with barely contained energy as weapons powered up and shields strengthened to maximum density. At 5 million kilometers, the Devourer defenses opened fire. The space around the Defiance erupted in streams of living energy, gravity wells that tried to crush the ship, and swarms of organic fighter craft that moved like schools of predatory fish. The human vessel's shields flared under the assault, but held. "Return fire," Sarah ordered calmly. The quantum warheads streaked toward their targets, each one guided by AI systems that had been programmed with one simple directive: find the processing stations and clear a path to them. The explosions that followed lit up space like a string of novae, each one erasing sections of Devourer ship cities from existence. The aliens' response was immediate and terrifying. The ship cities began to move, their massive forms undulating through space like sea creatures. New weapons emerged from their flesh, energy cannons that fired concentrated streams of death, missile launchers that spat living projectiles, and gravity manipulators that tried to tear the Defiance apart. Hull breach on Deck 12. Reported damage control. Ceiling blast doors. We've lost main sensors on the starboard side. Sarah watched the tactical display as the battle evolved around them. The Defiance was taking tremendous damage, but she was dealing it out as well. Each quantum warhead found its target, carving chunks out of the organic nightmares that surrounded them. "Captain," Dr. Hawkins called from her science station, "I'm detecting massive biological activity from the ship cities. They're adapting, growing new defensive systems." Sarah could see it on the display. The wounded ship cities were literally evolving new armor plating and weapon systems in real time. What should have been killing blows were becoming mere annoyances as the organic vessels healed and improved themselves. Tactical, switch to antimatter warheads. If they want to play evolution, let's introduce them to extinction. The antimatter warheads were humanity's ultimate weapon, devices that could erase matter from existence and leave nothing but raw energy in their wake. Each one was carefully regulated by Earth's government, their use restricted to the most desperate situations. This qualified. The first antimatter warhead struck the nearest ship city dead center, and the result was catastrophic. A sphere of pure annihilation expanded outward, erasing everything it touched. The massive organic vessel simply ceased to exist, taking with it millions of devourer organisms. The response was immediate and personal. Every remaining ship city turned its weapons on the Defiance, pouring enough firepower to sterilize a planet into the space around the human vessel. "Shields at 15%, reported the tactical officer. "We can't take much more of this." Sarah studied the tactical display, calculating distances and approach vectors. They had carved a path through the outer defenses, but the processing stations were still protected by 3 massive ship cities. Getting close enough to extract the prisoners would require running a gauntlet of weapons that could tear them apart in seconds. "Captain," the communications officer said urgently. "Incoming transmission from the processing stations. It's human." The voice that came through was weak, barely above a whisper, but unmistakably human. "This is Commander Lisa Park of the research vessel Discovery. To any human ships receiving this, don't attempt rescue. They're using us as bait. The whole system is a trap." Sarah felt ice in her veins. Commander Park was her Exos sister, part of an exploration mission that had gone missing 6 months ago. "Lisa, this is Captain Chun of the Defiance. We're here to get you out." "Sarah? Thank God. Listen carefully. They've been studying us, learning our tactics, our technology, our psychology. They know everything about human military doctrine. This isn't just a feeding operation. It's an intelligence-gathering mission." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The Devourers weren't just predators. They were preparing for war against humanity, and they had been using captured humans to understand exactly how to fight them. "How many survivors?" Sarah asked. 37 humans, maybe 200 Kytherians. "The children?" "Sarah, they're experimenting on the children, trying to understand how different species develop. You have to stop them." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on her. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and facing an enemy that had been studying humanity for months. By every tactical calculation, they should retreat and call for reinforcements. But children were dying. Her people were being tortured for information that would be used to destroy humanity. And somewhere in the darkness, a Kytherian mother was still broadcasting her desperate plea. "All hands, this is the captain. We're going in. Prepare for close assault." The assault on the processing stations began with controlled chaos. As the Defiance screamed through the Devourer defensive perimeter, Captain Sarah Chun initiated the most desperate gambit in human military history. The ship's emergency protocols activated, sealing every compartment and flooding the corridors with crash foam as they prepared for what the Marines called a dynamic boarding action, military parlance for ramming an enemy vessel at full speed. "Brace for impact," Sarah announced over the ship-wide communication system. The Defiance struck the largest processing station like a spear thrust into living flesh. The organic structure rippled and screamed, actually screamed across all radio frequencies, as the human vessel buried itself deep into its biomechanical heart. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the ship as damage reports flooded in. "Hull integrity at 40%, reported the damage control officer. "We're sealed into the target structure. No way out except through." Sarah nodded grimly. This was always meant to be a one-way trip. "All Marines, prepare for boarding operations. Remember, We have friendlies in there. Every human and Kytherian life is precious. Dr. Hawkins, I need you to identify which areas have the highest concentration of prisoners. The xenobiologist worked frantically at her station, her instruments adapted to scan through the organic walls of the processing station. Captain, I'm reading multiple holding areas. The humans are concentrated in Section Gamma, approximately 200 meters from our entry point. The Kytherians, they're scattered throughout the structure. Some in holding cells, others in what appear to be experimentation chambers. Sarah felt her jaw clench. Experimentation chambers. The clinical term couldn't hide the horror of what was happening to innocent beings. Commander Park, you have the ship. Keep us anchored in this thing, and maintain communications with the boarding teams. If we don't make it back. She paused, meeting his eyes. Make sure the galaxy knows what happened here. James Park nodded, his professional composure hiding the personal stakes. His sister was somewhere in this nightmare. Understood, Captain. Bring them home. Sarah led the first Marine team through the emergency airlock that her engineers had cut into the processing station's hull. What they found beyond defied description. The corridors of the station were a fusion of technology and biology that seemed designed by a madman. Walls that pulsed with organic life were interspersed with mechanical devices whose purpose could only be guessed at. The air was thick with humidity and carried scents that made the human nervous system recoil instinctively. Motion sensors are picking up movement everywhere, whispered Sergeant Torres, the Marine team leader. These walls, they're alive. The whole station is one giant organism. Sarah checked her scanner, following the signal that led toward the human prisoners. Behind them, the second and third Marine teams were branching off toward the Kytherian holding areas. They had maybe 30 minutes before the other ship cities realized what was happening and converged on their position. The first corridor opened into a vast chamber that made several Marines curse in languages from across Earth. Suspended in organic pods along the walls were beings from dozens of different species, some recognizable from galactic databases, others completely unknown. All were connected to the station through tubes and wires that pulsed with flowing substances. They're harvesting memories, Dr. Hawkins said through the communication link, her voice horrified. Not just consuming the bodies, they're extracting every thought, every piece of knowledge. Sarah forced herself to focus on the mission. Every second they spent staring at the horrors around them was another second the prisoners remained in captivity. Torres, take your squad and start cutting those pods open. Anyone still alive gets priority for extraction. I'm continuing toward the human concentration. The next chamber was worse. Here, the Devourers had set up what could only be called a laboratory, if laboratories were designed by creatures that viewed all other life as nothing more than interesting specimens to dissect. Tables made of organic material held beings in various stages of experimentation, while mechanical devices recorded every detail. Sarah found herself face to face with a Kytherian child, barely adolescent by their species standards, strapped to one of the tables while alien instruments probed its nervous system. The child's eyes met hers, and she saw intelligence, terror, and a desperate hope. It's okay, Sarah said softly, beginning to cut the restraints. We're here to take you home. The child spoke in its native language, words that her translator couldn't quite parse, but that carried universal meaning, gratitude mixed with disbelief that anyone had come for them. Captain, Torres reported through the comm, I've got 17 survivors from various species in the first chamber. They're weak, but mobile. We need to move fast. I'm reading massive bioelectrical activity throughout the station. This thing knows we're here. Sarah finished freeing the Kytherian child and handed her to one of the Marines. Get her to the extraction point. Continue the sweep. Anyone still breathing comes with us. The next chamber contained what they had come for, the human prisoners. Commander Lisa Park was barely recognizable. Weeks of captivity and experimentation had left her gaunt and scarred, but her eyes still held the fire that had made her one of Earth's best exploration commanders. Sarah, she whispered as her restraints were cut, you shouldn't have come. They know everything about us now. Our ship designs, our tactics, our psychology. They've been preparing for war against humanity. Then, we better make sure they don't get the chance to use that knowledge, Sarah replied, helping Lisa to her feet. How many others? 36 survivors from my crew and other captured vessels. They're in the adjacent chambers. But Sarah, Lisa grabbed her arm with desperate strength. They've been breeding something, using human genetic material combined with their own biology. I've seen the chambers. They're creating hybrid warriors designed specifically to fight us. Sarah felt cold dread settle in her stomach. The implications were staggering. If the Devourers had been using human genetics to create specialized weapons, then this wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a race to prevent a biological nightmare from being unleashed on humanity. Torres, new priority, she said into her calm. After prisoner extraction, we need to locate and destroy any biological development chambers. Use thermite charges, burn everything. The station around them suddenly shuddered, and the organic walls began to pulse with increased intensity. Through the structure, they could hear sounds that no human throat could make, the screaming of an organism in pain and rage. Captain, Dr. Hawkins' voice came through with urgent alarm. Massive bioelectrical activity throughout the station. It's not just angry, it's calling for help. Every ship city in the system is converging on our position. Sarah checked her chronometer. They had been inside for 18 minutes. The other Marine teams should be reaching the Kytherian prisoners by now, but extraction would take time they might not have. All teams, this is Chun. We have incoming hostiles. Accelerate extraction procedures. If you can't carry them, give them weapons. We're fighting our way out. As if summoned by her words, the chamber walls began to split open, revealing passages that hadn't been there moments before. From these openings emerged creatures that defied classification, biomechanical horrors that moved with disturbing speed and intelligence. The firefight that followed was unlike anything in human military experience. The enemy moved like liquid metal given malevolent life, adapting to human weapons in real time. Plasma rifles that should have incinerated them were absorbed and redirected. Kinetic weapons passed through them without effect. Switch to thermite rounds, Sarah ordered, firing her own weapon at a creature that had been reaching for one of the freed prisoners. High-temperature burns, they can't adapt to pure thermal destruction. The thermite rounds proved effective, but barely. The creatures screamed and dissolved when hit, but more kept emerging from the walls. The station itself was fighting them, turning its own body into weapons against the human intruders. Extraction point is compromised, Torres reported. The corridor back to the ship is filling with hostiles. We need another way out. Sarah looked around the chamber, her tactical mind racing through possibilities. They were trapped inside a living nightmare that was actively trying to kill them, surrounded by enemies that could adapt to their weapons, with hundreds of prisoners depending on them for survival. Dr. Hawkins, can you identify the station's control center? The brain or central nervous system? Captain, this entire structure is the brain. It's a distributed intelligence. But the scientist paused, running calculations. There are concentrations of neural activity in Section Delta. If we could plant charges there, we might be able to stun the organism long enough to escape. Torres, you heard her. Take half your squad, and the mobile prisoners back toward the ship. Fight through if you have to. I'm taking the rest to Section Delta. Sir, that's a suicide mission. The neural center will be the most heavily defended area. Sarah smiled grimly, checking her weapon. Sergeant, everything we've done today has been a suicide mission. The only difference is that this time, we're taking the whole station with us. She turned to the freed prisoners, seeing determination in their eyes despite their weakened condition. Commander Park was already checking weapons from fallen creatures, her exploration background having given her combat training. Anyone who can fight, grab a weapon. Anyone who can't, stay close to the Marines. We're going to shut this thing down, and then we're all going home. As they moved deeper into the station, the organic walls around them, the neural center of the processing station, was a cathedral of nightmares. Captain Sarah Chun and her team emerged into a vast chamber where bioelectrical storms raged across walls that pulsed with alien thought. Suspended in the center was a mass of organic tissue the size of a building, connected to the station through thousands of neural pathways that sparked with malevolent intelligence. That's it, Dr. Hawkins whispered through the comlink. That's the central consciousness. If we can destroy it, the entire station should go into neural shock. Around the chamber, Defensive organisms writhed like living weapons, creatures designed specifically to protect the station's brain. They had been waiting, and, as the humans entered, they began to move with coordinated precision. "Form a perimeter," Sarah ordered, watching the defensive creatures circle them like predators. "Thermite charges on the neural mass. We have maybe 5 minutes before the other ship cities get here." Commander Lisa Park, despite her weakened condition, moved with the precision of an experienced officer. "Sarah, look at the neural pathways. They're not just processing current information, they're transmitting. Every piece of intelligence they've gathered is being sent to the ship cities in real time." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Even if they destroyed this station, the Devourers would retain everything they had learned about humanity. The biological weapons, the tactical knowledge, the psychological profiles, all of it would survive to be used against Earth. "Then, we make sure there's nothing left to transmit," Sarah said grimly, pulling the thermite charges from her pack. "Torres, how's the extraction going?" The sergeant's voice came back through increasing static. "Fighting through heavy resistance, Captain. The corridor is alive, literally alive. Walls are trying to grab our people. But we're moving. ETA to the ship in 10 minutes, if we can maintain pace." Sarah nodded, focusing on the task at hand. Around them, the defensive organisms were closing in, their forms shifting and adapting as they prepared to attack. She could see human-like characteristics in some of them, the result of experiments using captured genetic material. "Dr. Hawkins, I need you to identify the primary transmission pathways. We're not just destroying the brain, we're severing its connections to the rest of the fleet." The xenobiologist worked frantically, her instruments mapping the neural network. "Captain, there are 7 major pathways. But the charges we have won't be enough to sever them all. We'd need—" She paused, running calculations. "We'd need a fusion detonation to disrupt the entire network." Sarah felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. The Defiance's emergency fusion charges were designed to prevent the ship from falling into enemy hands. They would vaporize everything within a kilometer radius. Using them would mean certain death for anyone still inside the station. "Torres," she said calmly into her calm, "how many prisoners are still inside?" Final count shows 32 humans and 47 Kytherians extracted. 6 more humans and maybe a dozen Kytherians still in the deep chambers. "We're going back for them." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the terrible mathematics of war. 50 people still trapped against the survival of billions back home. The choice should have been simple, but every instinct in her body rebelled against abandoning anyone. "Negative, Torres. Take everyone you've got back to the ship." "That's an order." "Sir, we don't leave people behind." "We do today, Sergeant. Because if we don't stop the intelligence transfer, everyone we're trying to save dies anyway when the Devourers attack Earth." The silence on the comm channel told her that Torres understood. The Marine sergeant was a professional. He knew the stakes. "Understood, Captain. Godspeed." Sarah turned to her team, seeing the same grim resolve in their faces. Commander Park was checking her weapon with the mechanical precision of someone who had accepted their fate. The 4 Marines with them had arranged themselves in a defensive formation, ready to buy time for the charges to be placed. "Lisa," Sarah said quietly, "you don't have to stay. You've been through enough." Commander Park smiled, the first genuine expression Sarah had seen from her. "My little brother is on this ship. My crewmates died in these chambers. I'm not leaving until this thing burns." The defensive organisms chose that moment to attack. The battle that followed was humanity at its most elemental. Beings who refused to yield, fighting creatures designed to consume them. Thermite rounds cut through biomechanical horrors, while alien weapons that dissolved metal armor found their marks on human flesh. Sarah fought her way to the central neural mass, carrying charges that would end not just the station, but everyone inside it. Around her, her people gave their lives to buy seconds of time. Marine Corporal Williams threw himself between Commander Park and a creature that moved like liquid death, dying so that she could continue setting charges. Private Chun, no relation despite the name, held a corridor against 3 adaptive organisms until her ammunition ran out, then used her own body as a weapon. "Charges placed on neural mass," Sarah reported, moving to the first transmission pathway, beginning severance of communication links. The station around them screamed, not just vocally, but across all electromagnetic frequencies. The pain of having its thoughts disrupted drove the organic intelligence into a frenzy. New creatures began emerging from the walls, these ones showing clear human characteristics, the hybrid warriors that Lisa had warned about. "Oh God," Dr. Hawkins whispered. "They're using our own genetics against us." The hybrids moved with human tactical intelligence combined with alien biology. They flanked the human defenders, used cover effectively, and demonstrated clear understanding of human combat psychology. But they had never faced humans who were fighting to save children. Commander Park took down 2 hybrids with precise shots before one managed to reach her. As alien claws raked across her chest, she grabbed a thermite charge and held it against the creature's body. The explosion that followed lit up the chamber and left her standing over smoking remains. 7 transmission pathways severed, Sarah reported, placing the final charge. Activating fusion detonation in 60 seconds. All hands, prepare for. Her words were cut off as the station's death scream reached a crescendo. The neural mass in the center of the chamber began to convulse, its connections to the ship cities sparking and failing. Through the biological walls, they could see the approaching Devourer fleet, massive organic vessels racing to save their dying station. "They won't make it in time," Lisa said with satisfaction. "We did it, Sarah. We stopped them." Sarah activated the fusion charges, watching the countdown timer begin its final minute. Around them, the defensive organisms had stopped attacking, instead clustering around the dying neural mass like mourners at a funeral. "Torres, status report," she called over the comm. "All prisoners extracted, Captain. Ship is prepped for emergency departure. We can break free of the station in 30 seconds if you give the word." Sarah looked around the chamber at her team. 3 Marines still alive, but wounded. Commander Park bleeding from multiple cuts, but still standing. Dr. Hawkins clutching her instruments like a lifeline. They had accomplished the impossible, stopped an alien intelligence from learning enough about humanity to destroy them. "Torres, get everyone clear. Emergency departure in 20 seconds. Sir, what about you?" Sarah smiled, thinking of her daughter Emma back on Earth, probably sleeping peacefully while her mother fought monsters in the dark between stars. "Someone needs to make sure these charges detonate. That's what captains are for, Sergeant." "Like hell," Lisa said, grabbing Sarah's arm. "The charges are on automatic. We're all going home." Before Sarah could argue, the station shuddered as the Defiance began to tear free from its organic embrace. Through the biomechanical walls, they could see space. Real space with stars and empty vacuum instead of living nightmare. "Run," Sarah ordered, and they ran. The escape through the dying station was a desperate race against time and alien biology. The corridors were collapsing as the neural shocks spread through the structure. Creatures that had been part of the station's defenses wandered aimlessly, their connection to the central intelligence severed. They reached the Defiance with seconds to spare, tumbling through emergency airlocks as the ship completed its violent extraction from the processing station. Behind them, the organic nightmare convulsed in its death throes. "All hands, brace for detonation," Sarah announced over the ship-wide communication system. The fusion explosion lit up space like a newborn star. The processing station simply ceased to exist, taking with it the collected intelligence of a dozen consumed civilizations and the biological experiments that would have been used against humanity. On the bridge, Sarah watched as the other ship cities reacted to the destruction of their intelligence center. Without coordination from the neural hub, they began to disperse, their formation breaking apart as individual vessels fled toward the edges of the system. "Captain," the communications officer said with amazement, "we're receiving transmissions from the extracted prisoners. The Kytherian children, they want to thank you personally." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the tactical display. In the distance, she could see the approaching signatures of human vessels, the Yorktown and Australia arriving as promised. But it was the other signatures that caught her attention. "Are those hegemony ships?" she asked. "Yes, Captain. Altarian Republic, Vegan Trade Confederation, Centauri Alliance. Looks like half the galactic community is heading this way." Sarah smiled, understanding the implications. The same species that had refused to help when children were dying were now racing to the scene of humanity's victory. They wanted to be associated with the success, to claim they had always supported the rescue mission. "Open a channel to Zara-THYSS," Sarah ordered. The Kytherian mother's voice filled the bridge, no longer desperate, but filled with wonder and gratitude. "Captain Chun, your people, they saved my children. All of them. How can we ever repay this debt?" Sarah thought about the political ramifications of what had happened. Humanity had just demonstrated that they could accomplish what the entire hegemony couldn't, or wouldn't. The balance of power in known space was about to shift dramatically. "No debt," Sarah replied simply. "We're parents too. We understand." As the Defiance limped away from the battlefield, surrounded by the rescued prisoners and approaching Allied vessels, Sarah reflected on what they had accomplished. They hadn't just saved lives. They had shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of when motivated by justice and compassion. The Devourers had learned about human military capabilities, but they had also learned something else, that humanity would cross any distance, face any odds, and pay any price to protect innocent life. That knowledge, Sarah suspected, would make them think twice before threatening Earth or its allies. In her ready room later, as medical teams treated the wounded and engineers assessed the damage, Sarah received a personal communication from Admiral Morrison. His face on the screen showed a mixture of pride and concern. "Chun, you've started something that's going to ripple across the entire galaxy. The Hegemony Council is in emergency session. 3 species have already approached Earth about formal alliance treaties." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. "What about the survivors? Commander Park and her people are getting full medical treatment. The Kytherian government has officially requested to join the Terran sphere of influence." "And Chun," Morrison paused. "The president wants to see you when you get back. Something about a new position in galactic affairs." As the call ended, Sarah looked out at the stars streaming past as the Defiance headed home. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were regrouping and adapting. Other threats would emerge. The galaxy was a dangerous place filled with species that viewed others as nothing more than resources to be consumed. But tonight, children who had been condemned to death were going home to their families. Tonight, humanity had proven that some principles were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. And tomorrow, when the next desperate plea for help echoed across the void of space, Sarah knew exactly how humanity would respond. They would answer the call. They always did. And to change. The casual horror of the experimentation chambers gave way to something more purposeful. Corridors that pulsed with neural activity. Chambers where bioelectrical storms raged like caged lightning. And passages that seemed to think. They were approaching the mind of the beast, and it knew they were coming. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed through the station as Torres fought to clear a path back to the Defiance. Ahead lay the heart of an alien intelligence that had consumed civilizations and was preparing to do the same to humanity. Sarah checked her ammunition and tried not to think about the odds. They had come this far on determination and human stubbornness. Now they were about to test whether those qualities were enough to kill a nightmare. She turned to Commander Park, seeing understanding and acceptance in his eyes. He knew his sister was down there. He also knew what they had to do. "Jamie, take us in fast and hard. Full power to engines. We're going to ram through their defenses and land a boarding party directly on those processing stations." The Defiance accelerated toward the heart of the Devourer formation, its crew working with the desperate efficiency of people who knew they were probably going to die. Behind them, space was filled with the wreckage of ship cities and the lingering radiation of antimatter explosions. Ahead lay the processing stations, organic structures where innocents were being tortured and murdered in the name of alien scientific curiosity. Sarah settled into her command chair as the ship raced toward its destiny. In a few minutes, they would either save hundreds of lives or join them in death. Either way, the Devourers were about to learn why humanity had survived every challenge the universe had thrown at them. They were about to face humans who had decided to care. Ere before those children are lost. The Defiance streaked through space toward its destination, leaving the wreckage of the first battle behind. Ahead lay horrors beyond imagination and enemies that defied everything they knew about warfare. But they were human, and they had made a promise to a mother whose children were in danger. That was all the reason they needed to face whatever waited in the darkness ahead. All stations report ready, Captain, Commander Park announced. Very well. Take us in. The stars ahead seemed dimmer somehow, as if the presence of the Devourers cast shadows across space itself. Sarah thought again of Zara THYSS, probably still broadcasting her desperate plea into the void, not knowing that help was coming. Not knowing that somewhere behind them, 2 more human ships were racing through the darkness. The galaxy had written humanity off as too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to fight. In the next few days, they would learn that sometimes, when everything else fails, dangerous and unpredictable are exactly what the universe needs. The hunt was on, and the hunters had no idea they were about to become the hunted.